welcome to the Silverbird Selection game review. This time I'm looking at a Silver Range sequel, as voted for by you guys in a previous video, of course. And the game I'm looking at is Thrust 2, which is of course the sequel to Thrust, which was a classic. Will the sequel be up to the standard of the first game? This game was released in 1988 on the Silver Range packaging. Pretty uncommon game to find out there. My copy cost me £3. So let's take a look at it and see how it plays. Let's begin as always then with the front cover artwork and black background on this one. The usual frame that you'd expect from a Silver Range game. Thrust 2 logo just seems to be derivative of the original Thrust if I recall correctly. Pretty bland in terms of there's no gradient of colour or anything, it's just a solid blue. And the image, the picture, well, it's pretty much a representation of Thrust. You've got the ship there, the triangular ship, with some kind of orb attached to it, but it's not particularly well drawn. It's pretty basic sort of graphical style there. Spine's got Thrust 2 on it. I nearly dropped the box then, by the way, if you wonder why it suddenly disappeared out of the screen. As you'd expect, and the back is a pretty plain black cover. A couple of screenshots which I'm pretty sure are not the Commodore 64 version. Very dark screenshots, not really very representative of the game either. I don't think there's not really a lot to discern from them. And then the blurb about the game on this one, well, it says, if your friends had Thrust, why don't you get Thrust 2? It's a bit of a strange thing. I suppose that's one way to advertise it, but maybe telling you a little bit more about the game itself might have been better. Inside, as always, we've got the list of games and the mail order stuff, so we'll just skip past that quickly. Get on to the actual instructions. So you can see here Thrust 2, lots of copyright information here. Copyright Simon Clarke and Andrew Rogers. Copyright Jeremy C. Smith, who was the designer of the original game, and also you've got the Commodore 64 conversion by Ubik. That's Dave Korn, who did several Firebird games. One of the ones that I've reviewed so far that he did was Arcade Classics. So Jeremy C. Smith, he was the designer of the original game, as I just said. I don't think he had a lot to do with this sequel. I think his name might just be on there simply because he was involved with the design of the original game. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly sure he wasn't that much involved. Anyway, so moving on to the game itself, it says you've decided to overthrow the evil empire of the music-hating Coreys by invading their solar system and destroying them with good music, which is a pretty pathetic premise for the game, to be honest. Doesn't really fit with the idea of the original Thrust either. So your plan is to collect musical components stored in protective orbs, which is obviously what goes on in Thrust. From deep within their 3 home planets of Stick, Aching and Walkman, which is a pun on Stock, Aitken and Waterman, the famous bad music producers from the 80s. And by towing the orbs to the surface and depositing them in the correct area, you can construct the machine to destroy the Coreys on each planet once and for all and return the joy of music to the universe. So yeah, not a really very good premise there. It's not very serious, and I'm not impressed with it anyway. So then you've got the loading instructions and then some basic gameplay instructions. You can play with a joystick in this one. It's not just keyboard, and you can use the keys as with the original game. I think they're exactly the same keyboard controls as the original game. And that's pretty much it. There's nothing on the last page, and it doesn't really give you any indication of what else you're supposed to do in the game other than that rather silly premise at the top there. So the game's now loading, as you can see, and well, it very much makes it clear that I load now. I don't know if that's the extent of the loading screen or if we're going to see something more. Well, we do have a loading screen, and here it is, and it's a bit of a strange one really. There's no mention of Thrust 2 on there at all, and there's clearly nothing much to do with space ships or picking up pods or anything. There's just a load of clocks hanging in various places, clock faces. Now, I didn't know this myself. I found it when I was looking on the user reviews on Lemon 64. This is actually a representation of a Salvador Dali painting. So why I decided to put this as a loading screen for Thrust, I have absolutely no idea, but it's completely irrelevant, albeit a quite nicely done piece of graphics, I suppose. So here you see the title screen for Thrust 2, and as you can see it's got quite an extensive high score table with lots of people's names in that are friends of the programmers. The programmer, as mentioned in the instructions, is Ubik, also known as Dave Korn, and the graphics, as you can see there, by Gary Penn, who was involved with Zap 64 for some time. I think by the time this game came out in 1988 he was no longer involved with Zap. So the title screen's got some interesting sort of psychedelic, trippy kind of throbbing green things going on. Most notable on this screen here, quite a clever sort of cycling of different types of little mini sprites, sort of ASCII character style sprites, that make it all sort of throb and pulsate. But that's kind of cool. It's not super spectacular, but it's quite a nice visual trick. Not much else to say about the title screen, so let's move on to the game itself. And I'm going to use the keys, even though you can play with the joystick on Thrust 2. The keys are much more precise, and basically playing with the joystick is just terrible, so I'm not even going to bother. So the first thing to note is there are no sound effects in the game. You only get the music, which was also on the title screen, which is kind of quite a high tempo sort of tune, also composed by Ubik. Not a massive fan of it, to be honest. It's a bit loud and noisy. I think it's quite well composed, but just a bit annoying at times. So right now it's not too bad, but at other times it's very noisy and kind of distracting. So the controls are exactly the same as the first game. It's left and right, Z and X to rotate left and right, shift to thrust, return to fire, although you can't always fire at the moment. I'm not able to fire. We'll get onto how you do fire in a moment. And space picks up the pods, and just like the first game, the idea is to pick up a pod and take it somewhere, but the difference is that you don't take it to the top of the screen to escape. You take it to a particular point on the screen, which is what I'm moving towards now, and you deposit it and it will become part of a machine. And when there you go, it's just turned into a bit of a machine there, you can see. And when you've deposited all the pods on the level and made the machine, presumably the level ends, although I've never actually completed this first stage. So another major difference to note between this game and the first game is obviously the graphics. They've gone from the sort of vector style graphics to proper sort of sprites for the main ship and the background, the sort of scenery, and also the aliens. It's all done in sprites now. You could say that's an improvement, although I think some people would probably argue that the vector style graphics are a little bit more stylish. But I do think the sprites are quite nicely done, so I'm not complaining about that too much. And the other difference between this and the first game is that you don't have lives. You can crash into the scenery, and what it does is you lose shields. You start off with 200 shields, currently down to 196. Every time you collide with the scenery or an object or an alien, then you lose some shields. So let's head off and try and find another pod. One annoying thing is this bit here, you can see that says up but points down. Actually, if you crash into that, you'll lose shields. And you can lose quite a lot of shields with these aliens as well, bouncing off that. So yeah, that just looks like a nice sort of background sort of signal, and in fact it's an annoying bit of scenery that you crash into. So my shields have gone down quite a lot there because those two aliens that I collided with have drained the shields. So I'll head over this way. There's another pod to pick up. There's several pods to pick up this way. I'm going to leave that one for the time being and go to this one a bit further up. So there's an alien to avoid here. Quite a big alien, quite nicely drawn one. This red pod on the left hand side here will give you bullets and also reset your shields, I think. Well, it didn't do that. I thought it did that, but it didn't. There we go. I was wrong. I'm sure that's happened previously, but there you go. So the bullets you would think were allowed to shoot the enemies, but there seems to be something where, depending on the bullets you pick up, the colour of those bullets, you can only shoot enemies of that colour. So I've got red bullets at the moment, not able to shoot that enemy up there, or that one to the left there. I'll demonstrate that a little bit later on. So now I've got a pod. You can see the inertia of the pod spinning around is quite serious. It's a lot. The control and the physics is nowhere near as good as the first game. You do end up stuck in places where you get spun around and it's impossible to keep control. I have just realised actually that I did get more shields from that red pod because they've gone up to 184. So you've got a time limit for how long your bullets last. To me this looks like a red enemy, so I should be able to shoot this, but I don't seem to be able to, so I don't know. It's a bit strange. There's also a timer on the left, which I think is how long you've got before the pod resets itself or something like that. But we'll just get the pod over to the left, the right here, sorry, and deposit that somehow. There we go. So that's created another piece of the machine. I won't bounce all over the place. Like I said, you do bounce all over the place. Try and drop and avoid these ships this time. There we go, that was better. So let's head and roam around the scenery a little bit more and see what we can find. There's another pod there with nothing obvious to protect it, so I might go and pick that up in a minute. Let's see what else we can see. The landscape mainly consists of pipes and sort of yellow scenery on this level. Goes quite a long way down. There's a nice skull there, that skull bouncing up and down is quite nicely animated and nicely drawn. I think the graphics are pretty reasonable. The ship, by the way, looks a little bit like the ship from Oh No, which is another game I reviewed earlier in this series, although this game I think probably came out at about the same time, so it's probably just a coincidence. There's another pod to pick up there, but I'm making my way down for a reason. So you can see there's a blue enemy there, dark blue, and over this way I believe, if I remember correctly, there's a blue pod, so I'm going to pick that blue pod up. Oh, here, oh, I'm all over the place. So now, if I go over and shoot this blue enemy, I think that will kill him. Although shooting stuff is not easy. There we go, killed him. Just to prove that the blue bullets kill the blue enemies. And just to sort of further prove that, if I try and shoot this, oh, that's killed that as well. Okay, so my theory's gone out the window now. It seems like some bullets can kill some things and some bullets can't. Anyway, let's pick up a pod and head back to the top. Oh dear. Yeah, so when you lose control, it's very difficult to regain control. Also, the pods, as you've just seen, you can crash them into the walls and they don't explode, so that does make it a little bit easier. I think I'm heading back up towards the top here. Yeah, one problem is that the screen area, the plane area, is a lot smaller in this version, in this sequel, and it's quite hard to spot what's coming up, so you'll get quite close to the edge before it scrolls and not really know what you're about to crash into, so that does result in you crashing into quite a bit of stuff like that. And now this pod's swinging all over the place, I'm losing control a little bit as well. Oh my word. Let's see if we can get back to the top here. I've actually got no idea where the top is. Oh, okay. Oh my. Yeah, so bouncing off that scenery there sent me all the way back down. It's really hard to keep control of the ship and regain control once you've lost it. I think the way back up is here. A map would have been good in this game because it's really sometimes hard to work out how to get back to the top. I think it's up here though. Nope, seemingly not. I have no idea where I am right now. Oh dear, no. I've absolutely no idea where I am. Can't shoot that with the red bullet. Oh. I'm stuck in the scenery now and my shields are draining. Oh no, this is going to kill me off, I think. I can't get out. I'm stuck in the scenery and there go all my shields and I'm dead. Well, I've seen enough. That's really annoying. That's a terrible bug. I got lost in the level somewhere, no idea where I was. And I've died, and that's really annoyed me, so I'm not going to play it again. You've seen enough anyway. It's quite hard to control, in fact very hard to control the ship, and there's a very big level that's hard to make your way around, hard to make your way back to the top as well. You can shoot some things, but only when you've got certain bullets, so that's annoying as well. Basically, it's just a bit of an annoying game. So let's move on to the review scores, shall we? So firstly, packaging. Wasn't particularly impressed with that. The image on the front cover is not great. The instructions aren't particularly good. and the two screenshots on the back were not very good either, quite murky, and also they're not from the Commodore 64, although that's acceptable if they're decent screenshots. So I'm going to go 5 out of 10 for the packaging. Presentation is reasonably good. Forgot I got my name in the high score table, by the way. Presentation is reasonably good. This screen's quite cleverly done. It's got a high score table, but there's nothing outstanding about the presentation. And also that loading screen was just completely weird. I don't know what was going on there. So I'm going to go with 6 out of 10 for presentation. The graphics are pretty good. I would say they're slightly better than the original game. They're perhaps not quite as iconic with the not having the vector style, but they're nicely drawn sprites, some nicely drawn and animated enemies as well. So I'm going to go 7 out of 10 for the graphics. Sound is just this music, which I find quite irritating. It's not bad, but it's not great either, so 5 out of 10 for the sound. And finally, playability. Well, it's taken the good things of Thrust, the physics, the precise control, and pretty much thrown them out the window. It's all over the place. As you saw, it's also got some bugs in it where you can get stuck in the scenery and lose all your shields. The playing area is a little bit too small, so overall it's a bit of a disappointing experience compared to the first game. So I'm going to give it 4 out of 10 for the playability, which is actually one more than I was going to give it, but I have got to grips with the controls a little bit better, and that made it a little bit more playable. So yeah, 4 out of 10 for the playability. That gives an overall score of 5.7. Pretty average game, and a bit of a disappointment compared to the original Thrust. In fact, you'd probably say it's quite a lot of a disappointment. So as for whether it's worth the money, well, I'm going to remind you of what it said on the back cover of the packaging, which was, if your friends had Thrust, why don't you get Thrust 2? Well, the answer to that is because it's a bit crap, and I would say it's definitely not worth the £1.99 asking price. So I'm not sure there's many fans of Thrust 2 out there, but if you've got any opinions on Thrust 2, then as always, please let me know your thoughts in the comments. And I think that'll do for this review. That's another review done then, and that means it's time for you to help me choose a game I'll play in a future video. This time the theme is pirates or cowboys. Did you prefer pirates or cowboys when you were a kid? Maybe you preferred neither, but these are the only two options. So if you want to go for pirates, then the game we're looking at is Booty. And if you want to go for cowboys, then the game we're looking at is Train Robbers. So there's your choices, Booty or Train Robbers, pirates or cowboys. Let me know in the comments which of those two you prefer. Let me know your thoughts about Thrust 2 as well if you've got any. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll see you next time in a few days with our next video. Bye for now.